Hello, my name is Sallyann Houghton. I am Unreal Engine biz dev for Epic Games, and I specialize in the fashion industry and its digital revolution. I have great pleasure today to host our panel, who will be logistically and philosophically unpicking a pretty momentous moment in the fashion industry's long history of fashion shows. So it was December 2020. Fashion Week looks fundamentally different from the last 100 years of collection presentations, and we know why, so I won't go into that. And so with lack of the physical, Fashion Weeks were forced to go digital, and in amongst a sea of linear presentations, often including a runway, there was a bold, bright, forward-thinking example of a different way. Balenciaga's full collection came forth, and people said it was standout, a game changer. Vogue said it was a quantum leap in fashion. And once again, Demna Gvasaly, master of immersive fashion shows, hypnotized us with the reveal of his latest Balenciaga collection via a bespoke video game called Afterworld, The Age of Tomorrow. So it was a video game. But it wasn't, it was so much more. It fundamentally was an interactive real-time adventure set in 2031 in the Balenciaga corner of the Metaverse. It marked a powerful shift in how designers' visions can be consumed by its community. A presentation where the raw emotion of the vision is clear for all to see and interact with, not just an elite few around a runway. Afterworld represented a new way of thinking about identity in the digital world, that the internet could be a rich, interactive, three-dimensional virtual playground for fashion. Now, let me introduce you to our panel. We have the three powerhouses involved in bringing this project to life. Niklas Bilstein, CEO and Creative Director of Substance and Inhalt. Simon Windsor, Joint Managing Director of Dimension Studios, and Alexander Fernandez, Chief Executive Officer of Streamline Media. So the aim of this discussion is to share your incredible insights into three key areas of the execution. How did this happen? And why did it happen now? What were your parts to play? And then the impact for the fashion community, the creative studios, and the industry. And your predictions. What does this mean moving forward? So let's start with Niklas. How did this begin for you and Substance and Inhalt?
Hi, everybody. My name is Niklas Bilstein, and I'm the creative director of Sub, based in Berlin. Like you pointed it out, by March last year, we just finished our previous physical fashion show, because we designed the physical fashion shows for Balenciaga as well. And as the pandemic was encroaching on us, we realized, obviously, we needed to take a new path. We couldn't do fashion shows as we know them. So we started really to have a conversation with the brand, understanding what is that we want to fulfill as a digital experience. And kind of early on, we outreach, making sure that as many people as possible could experience it, but more so maybe than in the physical fashion show. We made the clothes look absolutely fantastic. So photorealistic graphics, high fidelity environments and visuals. And the third one was also interactivity, which was kind of a new territory for us. If you put this together kind of as a Venn diagram, it becomes kind of like you said, a video game. But also the outreach was really important. So we wanted to be omni-compatible across all devices and so on. So game streaming or cloud game was the way ahead for us. We had not really done anything like this before. And we went through a really kind of arduous pre-production process of trying to map out what are the key stakeholders that we need to have in this project to make it come to fruition. We need a game developer. We need to have a way to capture the garments in a compelling. Balenciaga is very secretive about what they develop for the clothes, and not even us got to see the collection. So on the topic of sort of virtualizing clothes or designing them with marvelous designer or something like that was really not an option. Every 6 months, this new collection. So if you want to do something like this, we need to be able to do it within this 6 months time span. We were a bit lucky in this case, so we got a bit more time, but it took about 8 months from initial idea to final outcome. And And it was, yeah, a real journey, to say the least. The concept that we wanted to create, which you introduced, Sallyann, was this idea of Dem had a vision of creating a world in 2031. 2020 was a complex year where it felt like, you know, the failure of governance in society in a way, and how to deal with this pandemic. A lot of kind of social upheaval was taking place. We wanted to create a vision of the world that felt optimistic, that was kind of linking or latching on to a lot of different sort of on the verge technologies, from topics of sustainability, transportation, electrical vehicles, basically trying to build a world that is that's not futuristic, but also that's relatable, but really is kind of what we have now, just gone through some sort of evolutions of tweaks through this kind of positive lens. It was in order to create an experience like this, basically, we approached it to begin with as an architecture studio. You know, how do we build this world? The world seemed like the first thing that we wanted to create. We started looking at sort of contemporary architecture. How do you basically sort of how do you build this world from a kind of a spatial perspective? Because we're so used with scenographies, as we also designed the stores for Balenciaga, and architecture is kind of where we started. So, but we realized kind of quickly, just building an environment and putting looks inside is not going to suffice in terms of making an immersive, exciting experience. We had to start with the characters first, and then distribute them across the world, and create this small sort of small narratives around each and every character, which ultimately is a look. So it was a fashion experience, as it was completely orchestrated through experiencing these looks. It was 50 looks in total. But the way we had to relate to the looks was not just, as is usually, a model walking down a runway. They needed context, they needed character, they needed storytelling, they needed identity. And as we sort of discovered this as well, it dawned on us that not only do we need a movement design, a movement director, we needed basically to create small storylines to each and every character that was inside the game. I think one of the biggest hurdles that the project like this comes with is you need to have a bold partner like Balenciaga to kind of give it a get-go, you know? There was uncertain that, I mean, we knew that we had to get to a final product that was going to have really, really high visual output, and it's going to be exciting. I mean, that's what we have done for the brand previously. But it was really a challenge to really relate to them the complexity of what it takes to put all this together. And luckily enough, we had a really good team with us. Streamline provided us with a really, really kind of curious group of developers that were really eager to try to understand our vision from our world, coming from fashion architecture and not gaming, forth of trying to set, let's say, the conditions to make this successful. Looking back on it is, you know, this topic of eliminating assumption when a lot of new kind of players come together to create something new that's been done before. It requires a lot of dialogue and a lot of exchange. That's a little bit sort of like, yeah, I guess an initial outline to the project. Obviously, I'm sharing some slides here in the background as well. We're just going to keep on sharing them throughout the talk, but it's a little bit of tidbits from behind the scenes, some of the things that we've developed from sort of virtual assets, garments, behind the scenes footage, and so on. So we'll just keep on sharing that throughout the talk.
And Niklas, let me bring in Simon now. Simon, Dimension had a pretty unique part to play within this collaboration, and some super cool kit. Tell me about your Transformer truck. I think we saw a quick flash of it on the images. Hopefully we can kind of spin back around to it. How did this, you know, everything that you guys, including your kit, brought to the the project. How did it help bring the project to life?
Yeah, hi Sallyann, hi everyone. Yeah, it was. I mean, this was a great collaboration and project for Dimension to be involved in. Dimension specialise in like the creation of digital realities and digital humans, and one of the areas of focus for us is on bringing our volumetric capture solutions to productions such as Balenciaga or Afterworld. So in the case of Balenciaga, I suppose our role was very much to bring that virtual world and Demna's vision to life, literally by capturing the 50 different looks, the 50 models that populated Afterworld. And to achieve that, we had something like 8 years of R&D in the technologies which we brought to life via our mobile stage called Polymotion Stage, which we took to Paris to enable us basically to capture the volume of content and the number of looks within the production window that we had. So for us, it was a super high-tech production in many ways, but there was a lot of investment and innovation in the truck and the volumetric solution that sits behind the scenes, which helped to capture the looks and the fashion models, and to capture it at scale, and ultimately, to bring the kind of bold new virtual world and the vision of Balenciaga world to life. Why was volumetric important? It was important because the technology allows you to capture the authenticity of the models and also the garments, the movement and the motion of both the models and the garments. And obviously for Balenciaga, quality and aesthetic are really important. So we had to focus on that. And then there were challenges around how we could capture certain looks. The technology doesn't always perform at its best when you've got reflective materials, for example. So we had to work hard across a period of about 6 months on the pipeline that enabled us to ensure that we could capture the looks to the right quality. We could introduce prop replacement where it was needed, for example, where sunglasses might need to be added or heels might need to be replaced, and ultimately to faithfully recreate the look of the Balenciaga range, and to bring that into the world which Streamline created. It really was state of the art, because we were streaming in these volumetric assets into the real-time world in an interactive environment that consumers could play. And this was the first time anything like that had been done. So it was super cool for us to be involved.
No, and there's a lot of, it looks as if there's a lot of tech firsts there. Did you find that the experience allowed you guys to have firsts that improved your skills?
Yes, so like I say, we worked hard on the pipeline specifically around this production. The nature of the technologies we work with, they're always evolving. The demands and in the nature of the briefs, the creative briefs that we get, always look to push the capabilities. So we're continually investing in R&D, but the core technology that sits behind the system is Microsoft's mixed reality capture system technology. And we worked alongside those guys and also our partners at Nikon and Mark Roberts Motion Capture, who are partners in the actual truck to bring these things to life. But the production itself was, it was in the middle of the pandemic. We had to take a team over to Paris. We had to get the truck into Paris during lockdown, which was obviously a challenge in itself. And then whilst the team were over there, filming under tough conditions anyway, this was a tough production under normal circumstances. London went into lockdown. It was a really unique production and environment in which we were operating. But I suppose the 6 months of testing on the pipeline, dealing with the data, dealing with the prop tracking, ensuring that the plug-in into Streamline and the streaming of the assets would work, that all came together as it was meant to. So we were delighted with the results.
You did a great job. I think we've talked about it before, and we talked about impossible stakes and stamina. That's the catchphrase of this project.
Yeah, and I mean, to add to what Simon was saying, which was, of course, as the collection was under wraps, right? We only knew that they would be ready to be reviewed, the collection, a week prior to us doing the big capture session in Paris, which was over 5 or 6 days. We have obviously articulated to the brand as well that there's going to be challenges with shiny materials, metallics, blacks and greens. And of course, as the collection arrives, it's primarily metallics, dark blacks and greens. So that obviously, again, sort of in terms of what's so exciting about this project, and also one of the main challenges is that I mean, the type of storytelling that you need to do in order to make this come alive can be done in video in other type of formats, but it is really this rigorous preparation process of making these assets ready to sort of come together within this within the world, right? And that is really quite arduous.
At this point, let me bring in Alex. So we've seen how momentous the project is, but also how challenging it has been. So when I can imagine when Niklas called you, your first thought, even if it wasn't your first response, but your first thought was, no, thank you, I'm fine. It was a very ambitious, aesthetically project, and there wasn't necessarily enough time, and it was going to be super high profile. So what, Alex, made you say yes?
Yeah, hi. I'm Alexander Fernandez. Basically, the reason why was because it's something we've been waiting for 19 years, going on 20 years. We've always seen that the promise of video game technology would be its ability to unlock value in other realms of business. And so when we got this project, Niklas gave us a call. The insanity of it is what really attracted to us. We're like, wow, we have 4 months to make an interactive experience that can present a luxury fashion brand's clothes and collection. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's do it. We've faced these type of marches before in entertainment. Let's see what we can do for the fashion industry. But honestly, what it came down to as well was the fact that the allure of working with high creative, high technology, state-of-the-art concepts, that's what we're in this business for. Pushing more of the same is never interesting for a company like ours. So the real opportunity to come in, do something that hadn't been done and try to push the boundaries, it was definitely something we wanted to do. But the timeline was a concern. I mean, 4 months ain't a lot of time to do much, especially for game development. So for those out there that were wondering if it's possible, it is possible. It's a grueling march. It's like what we like to refer to as a death march in the games industry, but it was something that was achievable. And the primary, I think, reason that it was able to be pulled off was because of the communication and because everyone involved came with their best A game. And I think this is something that honestly we'll probably talk about in this panel, but everyone's capability coming together, pushing and understanding the stakes, understanding what it means for them, willing to be open, willing to communicate, and willing to just effectively try. That, I think, is the magic that kind of captured it up. And of course, the pandemic making everything that much more insane, it just created this nice pressure cooker that, turned everything into diamonds. Though I would say that in the end, ultimately it came down to really just understanding and willing to suspend your doubt of what is possible. And I love this part here. It's that suspension of disbelief. That's how this project was yielded, and at least for us, that's how it felt like.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, why do you think, you say that, you've been waiting 19 years for the call, but why do you think you waited? Why, like, the tech has been available to us all to do this type of experience for a while now. Why haven't you had the call? What was different about now? Why was Balenciaga ready? Why was the industry ready now?
The thing is like this, the obvious thing, I think, is that, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think for a lot of industries in general, the ability to basically, think that video game technology or that these tools could be utilized with games has been seen as an entertainment medium since the beginning. And so the idea that you could actually pull this in and make something of such standing was hard to stretch. But I think what's happened over the past 20 years is, I don't want to pick on the generational differences, but we started to see people, from Gen X, millennials, started pushing into these realms. And then some very open-minded kind of hippie-like boomers who are like, hey, this thing called games, let's see what we can do. And of course, because of the pandemic, because I mean, this is the thing, everyone's mind opened up, it was almost like our third eye became aware, and we're like, oh, look, we need to still connect, yet we can't risk ourselves being outside, except for Simon in the Transformer truck, which, God bless you guys for going out to Paris to do that. The reality is that basically, people became more open. And now that we've been able to achieve this, I think basically the cat's out of the bag, where industries around the world are coming, and over 20 years, so to speak, since we started, there were many false starts. You'd get that one person. I remember we worked with Coca-Cola back in 2009, very groundbreaking group of people that were like, let's use games. But of course, they were the outsiders within an organization that was like, come on, guys, we do real advertising. We don't play games. But this is the thing, the forethought of it being just an entertainment medium, I think, has expanded into this new thing, this metaverse, where this is the reality of how generations want to interact. This is the way we want to see products. This is the way we want to basically see a physical and digital persona become one unified reality. This is what is happening. So the call, I think, it just took time. I'm just glad I was waiting around this long with our team. So, and of course, this is the opportunity. So why not?
You hung in there. Well done, Alex. No, I'm in total awe of everything that you guys achieved. It's incredible. And it was incredibly well received pretty much by all media, not just the fashion or the gaming world, but across the board. It's a huge achievement. So in many ways, this was fashion taking its first steps towards the metaverse, as you've mentioned, Alex. And we briefly touched upon some digital representation and identity, which I find fascinating. How do you think the piece impacted the fashion industry's ongoing conversation about digital identity and the metaverse?
For myself, I think, the topic of identity really sounds really close personally to my heart. I think where I come from and the type of subcultural self-representations that I've been sort of exploring throughout my entire life gave me a type of an idea of sort of this kind of emancipation through expressing yourself through clothing or at least your interest or your actions and attitudes and so on. I think with fashion, it's kind of, it's an old format. The things that matter within fashion is really quite nuanced. What happens, I think, sometimes when you introduce sort of new technologies, that there's nothing sort of referential to latch on to for fashion, which is so concerned about its self-image. Oftentimes, when you create collections and identity within a fashion context, you depend on sort of referential anchoring points. Sometimes that are sort of contradictory. You sort of take some sort of culture, sort of subcultural identity, and you merge it with another type of aesthetic, and out comes a new type of language and shape, But ultimately, with gaming, we haven't seen so much there's only really recently we see a type of maturity in games that also gives a kind of a mature aesthetics. This game in particular offered it to some degree, I guess. But the game concept was also to really play on the fact that it was a game. And that's very much part of the design methodology of Balenciaga at large. We didn't try to make it, it was trying, like you said, this intersection of it being a game, but not really a game. We intentionally put a lot of these kind of game navigation visuals into the game, like the Pathfinder, the boundary path, and all of these kind of aspects to make it feel more game-like. So that was kind of this meta commentary to gaming. But ultimately, I think we managed to succeed into making it sort of compelling experience because we were making a little bit, not fun out of it being a game, but like playing with the fact that it obviously is a game was also part of the aesthetic decision-making. When it comes to identity and self-representation, I think fashion is still really at the threshold of understanding what that is. And I do think it's quite intriguing now, though, how, for myself, being on like social media, I'm a sort of online self-representation. It's always been a tool of sort of trying to be like the best potential of what I want to be, or morphing my own identity, or, this idea of online avatars and personas is really, it's the thing, particularly with younger generations. I'm curious to see how we take this now and sort of develop it into something bigger. Like the metaverse is not just a single sort of experience, but more like a multi-link, latch-on, collaborative, sort of co-built metaverse. And to see how a platform like that can exist when you have a persistent persona that you interact or sort of exist within a larger world. So I think this is really just a kind of a taste of something much bigger to come.
No, I couldn't agree more. And Simon and Alex, is there anything that you guys want to add with concern to our digital representation and how this project is changing the conversation?
I think, yeah. So I think you know, your fashion brands have long, you know, conceived their own you know, conceptual story worlds, and with Balenciaga Afterworld, it's, you know, very much their own metaverse with the expression of, you know, of fashion and story within that. What really, I think what's really interesting is that, you know, the metaverse is going to be a catalyst to distributed identity, right? And, you know, it's an evolution, an extension of how we engage with digital and social today. You know, how we express ourselves, how we engage with brands, the representation. The metaverse is going to provide the playground for us to explore and experiment and be more immersed in that space. So I think what Balenciaga have really done is thrown a spotlight on, you know, where we are headed. It's very much the starting point for greater creativity within this space.
Yeah, no, I think we all agree that we're at a really super exciting point in the development of the metaverse concept. And, you know, the question is no longer what is the metaverse? The question is, who am I in the metaverse? And I think as a result of executions like Afterworld, people are really starting to explore and develop the answer to this question. And the fashion industry is incredibly well positioned to support and amplify everyone's curiosity. So guys, what do you think we have? What's the future? Where do you see things going from here? What does the moment a collection launches look like in the future? And do we still have shows? And if Afterworld is the fashion industry's first few steps towards the metaverse, what do you think the next few could be?
Well,
Alex,
you know,
do you want to begin?
Yeah, sure. So from my perspective, I take a step back and look at it from the overall, let's say, supply chain to customer perspective. And what excites me about metaverse and interacting with the fashion industry is really the ideas around trying on clothes, experiencing stores, drive to purchase mechanics, the ability to basically create customer experience, bespoke type of experiences that can only be delivered through more of leveraging of community, the way games build solid communities where, you know, my group of the first million buyers who I know are going to be high spenders come and I can basically give them VIP type of solutions. So this type of highly curated, high touch, you know, completely on persistence universe is something that I believe is coming down. And I think this is something that's just not for the fashion industry, but it's really for all major brands. But ultimately, it's that way of interacting and understanding that it's not a language we have to teach people. This is a language that a lot of people are just digitally fluent in already. And, you know, I guess if I look at the bright side of the pandemic, it's brought a lot of people into this understanding of how to just interact and utilize technologies like this. So in the future, what I'm seeing here is basically organizations that really have their own interfaces for their own select customers, for their specific way of interactions and driving those purchases and effectively giving you the consumer experience that you otherwise wouldn't get. And I think that being brought to everyone in the world at the exact same time, a truly global launch, the way that, you know, effectively Afterworld was streamed all over the world, that is the type of thing that I see. And I think that is exciting for anyone who basically is a creative and really, frankly, a business. You have these opportunities. So that for me is where it's going. And, you know, of course, you know, utilizing and leveraging the fact that all of these high creatives, whether they are from the fashion industry or from the film industry or from the games industry, all of us coming together and being able to utilize the same technologies, understanding each other through those technologies, and of course, forming a common language that we can all work together on. And I think that's just going to push the craft up to the next level.
And Simon, Niklas, is there anything you want to add?
Yes. Yeah, for myself, I think like with this Afterworld, this example, like kind of view it as a kind of a closed metaverse interactive cinematic experience, if you will. That there's you know, you give the participant a few different choices of participation, a few mechanics that they can abide by, and it's really about telling a story. And that's one kind of way, I guess, within the format of commerce, you can enable people to have incredible interactive experiences. But then, of course, it's more like the open metaverse, the kind of metaverse that holds a lot of potential, which is more anchored in, let's say, sort of deeper sociocultural potential, where there are maybe multiple metaverses that linked all to one another, and you have this persistent persona and character that you can sort of traverse across these different worlds. This is really interesting, I think, today through this lens of decentralization, blockchain, NFT, and Ethereum, how you can sort of build a world on top of those type of crypto platforms, and eventually kind of create this kind of unhinged opportunity of having a really sophisticated personal avatar, and having that avatar come in and participate in a kind of closed metaverse experience like the one that we created now is intriguing. But if you're really going to think in a bigger picture, I think this co-creation of a larger metaverse and how those are linked together is, I guess, that's the big thing to come, and understanding what that requires from an infrastructure standpoint, design standpoint, and sort of collaborative standpoint is something philosophically and technically very interesting to imagine.
So we'll have to draw it into an end. So thank you so much, guys. So I think we all agree that the metaverse is our ultimate destination, a fair and fluid place encompassing all aspects of life, play, knowledge, storytelling, and most importantly, identity. With Afterworld, Balenciaga began to create its very own corner of the fashion metaverse and gave fashion enthusiasts an open invitation. And as I think we all see it, we must continue our journey towards the metaverse. And it's imperative that we enable citizens to create and share their unique identities and belong to a community. Afterworld historically began to do this. And the fashion industry is a formidable vehicle to continue to do this. And with powerhouses, creative technologists like Dimensions, Streamline, and Substance and Inhalt, and the unique vision of creatives like Gavasali, the fashion industry is in good shape to be the conduit to identity and community in the metaverse. So watch this space, everyone. Thank you so much, guys, for our conversation today. And I think I now have to hand back over to Matthew and team.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sallyann, of course. Thank you, Niklas, Alex, and Simon. It's really amazing to hear about the behind the scenes of this wonderful project. It's really amazing. I must say, when I learned about the release of a Balenciaga video game, at first I was very scared because I didn't know what to expect. But I think the result is really amazing. And as we all said, this will be a big premiere, but not the last. And it's really a huge milestone also for the fashion industry and for the game industry. So we had a lot of questions from the audience, and I suggest that we start the end panel of this digital fashion session to tackle those questions. So I welcome back everyone to join me for the end panel. So Sallyann, may I start with you? So you're in charge of fashion, digital fashion at Epic Games. It's an unusual title, and for someone to be named, in charge of a specific domain at Epic, that must mean something, right?
Well, depending on who you're speaking to. I don't know I don't think anyone could be in charge of fashion. It's impossible to keep fashion in line. But I am the conduit, let's say, from Epic and the Unreal Engine team to the fashion industry, which is a joy and a pleasure, and kind of speaks to where I've come from with concern to creative content and working with the fashion industry, and then moving through a kind of tech existence. So it's brought together everything that I have, my journey that I've traveled over the last 20 years. And it's possibly one of the best jobs in the world. I'm very, very lucky.
Great. And so I've seen that already some new fashion shows, digital fashion shows were released. I watched, I think it was this Sunday, the fashion show of Gary James McQueen. Yeah, it was amazing. I hope many more will come, and that's fantastic. Matthew,
Yeah.
do you have? Sorry, Sallyann, go ahead.
No, absolutely. You know, my role involves speaking to the fashion ecosystem every day, and there is so much excitement out there. There is so much motivation to move towards real time, to learn more, to understand more, and I think that we will see lots more executions moving forward. I think that the real time community can definitely help by hand-holding and being patient and helping the learning curve of the fashion industry, but there's a motivation, there's a thirst. The fashion industry is seeing game partnerships, they're seeing collaborations, they're seeing fantastic executions like Afterworld, and they want to partake. So I think that next year at the RealTime Conference, we'll have 6 hours rather than 3 hours to talk about the crossover between real time and fashion.
Well, I really hope so. Matthew, any comment or question about Balenciaga's Afterworld?
So actually, I'm really pleased to be on a call with all of those guys, because I remember very clearly when the press dropped for Afterworld, because I was actually in the college doing our volumetric capture that I showed a little bit of earlier, and we were beginning to work out this plan of maybe we could do like a game type experience. And literally read that afternoon. It's like, for a long time, it felt like the team and I were kind of a little bit out on our limb doing this, and there weren't too many other examples. And the last 18 months, 2 years has seen this explosion of interest, whether it's students at the college or startups or creative agencies or brands themselves pushing it. There is this huge tidal wave of interest in where gaming, digital game engines, real time can all come together to create really exciting new experiences. And what we really need is this community to come together, because I think fashion alone is not going to be able to do it. The skill sets are so multidisciplinary and the opportunities are so huge that kind of this kind of event is really important and really exciting. So yeah, it's thrilling to be here with everyone.
Yeah, so exactly. So we're all talking about digital fashion, but none of us is designing clothes. So it might seem contradictory. What do you think? How is that? Is that because 3D is too complex to take on by the fashion industry right now? Or is it not mature enough? What will the future will bring in that regard? As you've seen, the technology also improve a lot in the last years.
I think Paul has a good steer on that.
I think there's an obvious and an unobvious answer that I have. The obvious is that it's just hard, right? I think this is like a theme in 3D. In content creation is just brutal, and I for sure we're solving all that, right? I'm yada yada yada. AI will solve. I had an interesting conversation with my son this weekend, because I've been trying to encourage him. He's very, he used to live in Paris. He's here. He's going to go back to Paris once ever the world opens up again, because that's where his studio is. And I think as technologists, at least I'll speak for myself, I forget one thing, is the sensuality of this industry. And Guillaume brought that up a bit, but I'm totally not that way. But what's missing for him is there's two things. Is that number one, the sensuality of creation, right? And I think that's a challenge for all kinds of artists who want to digitize, and I don't have a solution to that. But he was like, Dad, it's just, I like cutting things up. I like sewing. That physicality is important to me. And then the second one is, I think, and I don't know how to get my head around, is I think Niklas, no, actually it was Alexander was talking about this. It was like how, younger people are getting into this and they're gamers, and so they're opening up. But one thing we haven't talked about is like the digital fashion in the metaverse, like actually wearing clothes in the metaverse and all of that. And I think, just talking to him, my son again, they push back on that. They don't see that as real clothing, and it's not real. And I was quite surprised. So I don't have an answer to all of this, but I was just surprised how I think a lot of fashion designers don't think digital is a legitimate art form. And well, I disagree with them. I think it's going to be massive, but anyways, I'll stop talking.
I do think it's changing though. I think like it's in changing this moment. It's, you know, we are in the moment of change. In that, I totally agree in that historically there hasn't been a value put on the digital representation of something. And in a way, I think that is understandable because the aesthetic hasn't been comparable to the real. But I think, you know, even just in the last 18 months, you know, that the aesthetic is there. We know how to reach photoreal, we know how to light it effectively, we know how to create the emotion that a real life garment would get in front of a camera on a set. So I do feel as if there are many kind of pennies dropping, many people changing their mind for the first time probably in their career, that actually there is a value in digital design, and that, you know, it's slow, but I feel as if like there isn't a fashion brand at the moment that isn't in some way dabbling in digital design. They might not advertise it, but they're talking about it. They're beginning to see its value out in the world, in the digital world. But it's slow coming, and it will be continue to be a little bit slow.
Yeah, I'd like to add one. I'm sorry. I just have one thing I'd like to add to this. I think that if you want to get more people in here, say fashion or otherwise, we have to make sure that the tools are easy to use, intuitive to use, that the language is understandable. You know, in the end of the day, the more we make it akin to or like, you know, cutting fabric, the more we basically spend time to user interface, to the way we basically can bring and teach, the better off we'll be. And so I think it's really upon us as designers of technology, designers of immersive experiences, to understand that it is not a native thing for everyone. So we do need to bring this in. And if we can get it into the school system, for me, 3rd grade onwards, or so effectively when you're 8 or 9 years old, we will create those next generation people. But for the generation that exists now, we just want to make it easy so that they can basically pick it up and go. And I think that accessibility, that is key. We solve that, and then we unlock the economy. That for me is really where it is. And it's up to us to do that. It's not, I can't tell someone like, here, change your way of being. You've only done this for 60 years. I'm like, no, you know what? Here's a digital scissors, cut. Now here you go. So I think these type of interfaces, we can be very clever. And I think this is where we get that, or, you know, effectively those AR type of headsets. We get there, and then we will bring in everyone else.
That's very true. And I think, as you said before, when you start talking to the fashion people, the fashion industry people, it's a completely different world. But if you approach it with open mind and willingness to give your best in there, it's really two words coming together, and you want to be the facilitator for creating something that is photorealistic, that tries to approach the real thing and do something that hasn't been done before, just like what you were saying earlier. So I think that's why we always say with Matthew that, you know, collaboration is needed, because it's not something where we all have the solutions on the technical side. We learned a lot of stuff talking to Chloe and learning how they'd like to use the technology. But from us, at first it looked very strange, even weird to do that. But these are the requirements of the users of that technology. So we need to be able to listen to them. So it's very important, as you said. There was a peculiar moment yesterday, if you've attended the MetaHuman talk at RealTime Conference, where Matt Workman was presenting as a MetaHuman in the panel, and when asked, you know, what he would like to see more of in the MetaHuman ecosystem, he asked for more clothing option. So, you know, there's an opportunity over there for sure. Do you have any comments on that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I would jump in quickly and just say, I think it's that the fear that the fashion industry sometimes has around replacing physical with digital, and actually the opportunity is for this to be something else. It can be additive to the experiences that we already have, and that savoir-faire that has existed for so long is going to be created in a digital form. Like there is that art, that craft that we can create within digital artists. So yeah, it's clearly going to be a massive, massive opportunity for brands.
Yeah, I think also for myself, I think like, but not only fashion can be so deceptive sometimes because it's such a simple word, but encompasses so many things from craft to identity to experience and so on. And I mean, I think we at one point also need to surrender to the complexity of these topics. I mean, we've talked about Metaverse, it's a universe, it encompasses all things. And I think within just the creation of garments, you have the pattern cutters, the seamstresses, the people that make the embroideries, and yeah, lots of treatment, washing, textures. There's so much that goes into making a garment. And I've encountered young people in our studio that are more savvy at retouching, let's say, the skin of their Sims character more than they can make, retouch their distressed denims or whatever. So I mean, that is also generational in a way. But what my statement, I guess, would primarily be, it's like the topic of identity and self-representation, also just beyond garments, is an entire psychological foray, and that is never ending. And I think, yeah, surrendering to the complexity that we're talking about, so many different things. And there's the production side of digitization of fashion, which is interesting and ripe, and it's going to open so many doors. But identity and self-representation coexists with that, but also it's an entire territory. So maybe for the next RTC, maybe there's a more diversity of more spearheaded talks on all these topics, maybe.
I wanted to recall a very nice moment we had when we were at the fashion school. We spent 1 year in the fashion school because we didn't know anything about fashion. And suddenly we had to tweak a pattern, a floral pattern on a dress, and the computer artist didn't have any clue what was good or bad. And we bring a female student. She was about to be graduated, and it was really a touching moment where the guy tried his best to be the tool for the fashion designer, and that's really a man I like. And it's a bit a question for Alexander. Myself, I was interested by the fashion industry for a more balanced environment compared to games. Basically, I've done all my career since 23 years old in the game industry. Some project lasting 5 years. I was wondering if when the women in your studio, you have a big studio, a very famous studio, there was an extra motivation regarding this project, both sides, from guys and from girls. Did you notice something different?
What's funny about this, and this is going to sound horrible, but basically the guys in the studio, when they realized that they could tell their families and their girlfriends or wives what they're working on, and everyone was like, oh, I know Balenciaga, that made the huge difference. It literally was no longer, oh, you make, these toys. It went, you worked on fashion, and these guys got credibility where it was funny because all of a sudden they became little rock stars. And I'm like, this is great. And that was the moment where I'm like, wow, self-respect. But honestly, the confidence level shot through the roof because, you know what, let's just be clear. It's like, again, we make beautiful games. I love it. It's a great art form. But when you can go to the store and buy something physical and it can make that emotional impact on you, and then that other people recognize what that is, that was the moment in their lives where I just kind of sat down, and I get a call from one of the general manager, Richard, and he goes to me, he's like, everyone's super happy. And I go, I bet, because you know what, for the first time in their life, it has nothing to do with what is considered to be geeky, nerdy stuff. It's fashion. And you know what, it's like, this is the thing, all the fashion people get the benefit of that. I mean, what an industry, because it's that recognizable, it's that impressive. And so that's really was. And in terms for the women of the studio, I mean, honestly, I think it was just, the ability to work on it. I don't want to gender that one specifically, but it was more about the fact that it was different. And I think this is, again, coming back down to it. If you think about, we solve puzzles as a company, it's all puzzle solving the way we look at this, figure out the problem, solve the problem, create the solution. This ability for them to basically do it on something that is beyond just playing a game, but actually interacting with something, I think it gave a lot of confidence and also validation not just for you know, any gender, but for us as a studio to say, you know what, finally the world is here. And I think that was that moment for us where it's just like, hey, you know what, you be proud. And that honestly is one of those moments, because you know, it's not like your mind is rotting in games. It's like, no, you're basically in the economy now, and that was great for them.
No, that's totally deserved, and yeah, to me, that's really my motivation to. I think the technology is here now to do something a bit more sensitive. We have all this knowledge to create experience, and I think games industry really was the first industry to create experience. It's an overused word, but it was the first to do it with a few pixels, and the motivation is really now to go as far as possible in terms of finesse, crafting something beautiful, being helpers in that, because we are not fashion designer, and yes, having something more rounded than the brutality of game development, whatever the time it takes, because here your experience was few months against 1, 2, 3, 4 years for a game. And myself, that's really my motivation to help make that happen. And again, congratulations for the very interesting to hear the process on how to take some game mechanics that were very well known, like I don't remember what you said, the path finders, and to integrate that game art direction with the fashion universe. So to me, when I complete Afterworld, I was totally somewhere else, and I think for me that was the goal of this first experience. So thank you.
You know, I would just add one thing onto what I just said, and on top of what you just expressed. You know, the one thing about the video games industry is that we're all street magicians. You know, we're on the street doing these parlor tricks, and we all know each other's trick. We all think we're Houdini, right? Then all of a sudden we go into another industry where for them, we're like Gandalf, we're the master wizard, because we do things that they're like, wow. And at that moment in time, you realize you can entertain the world. And you realize with another industry, the appreciation that they have for what it is you do. And I think that moment, especially for students, especially for those that are wanting to get in this space, realizing that within the own industry, the games industry, you know, we're insular for most part. But if you do this for other industries, I mean, nonstop, sky's the limit. So I think this is something that I really, you know, and you know, it's not that I'm poo-pooing on the industry. It's just the fact that I'm being very honest about it. When everyone knows how to do the same trick, you need to find a new audience. And this audience, global fashion, well, let's just call it the economy, which is basically a big industry. That is what's fascinating. And I think this is the thing. And so for all the students and anyone out there listening, it doesn't have to be entertainment. Honestly, if anything, it's somewhere else. And I think that's something that I think is very key. And it's something that as we get more people, more games developers to realize that, I think we're going to see an acceleration of adoption of technologies and new experiences, new input devices that will facilitate a transformation where that metaverse is just always here. And that it's as basic as, you know, how everyone knows how to use Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. That's how basically it will become. It's just going to be one of those things. But, you know, maybe I'm a little bit out there, but that's the world that I'm seeing right now.
I'm totally with you on that, Alex. I think one of the things that's really exciting from our perspective at the moment is we're in this period of like radical experimentation within digital fashion, right? You've got all these different technology curves that are intersecting, enabling different magic to happen at each point, whether it's the use of, you know, like volumetric video or real-time game engines or computer vision, you know, or augmented reality and virtual try-on. You know, you look across the spectrum and there's brands, you know, increasingly experimenting and playing. And I think, you know, no one really knows what digital fashion is going to become ultimately. You know, we've spent, you know, over 100 years, you know, defining fashion as we currently know it. Well, we're at the very start of what virtual fashion will evolve into. And it's only really at the moment that we're starting to explore what that might become.
Can I just do a really quick shout out to the community on the back of Alex's, but everything that's been said. I think, and I love Alex's view of the world. It's amazing, especially with him being Gandalf there with his staff, entertaining everyone. But I couldn't agree more. And I just to the Unreal community, if there is anyone there, if in working in the gaming industry and they have a passion for fashion, then there are so many opportunities now in the fashion industry. And I think that I don't necessarily think that the gaming industry realize that yet. But the fashion industry is so enthusiastic, and they're so desperate to learn and know and to fully understand the opportunity that lies within real time. And so they desperately need Gandalfs to come across and to help shepherd them through this landscape and create amazing pieces, whatever they may be, whether it's the design and the more practical side of things, or whether it is huge shows, or whether it is sharing the collection with an interactive experience. That they are so desperate to learn, and they need people that are versed in an interactive space, and most of them sit in the gaming industry at the moment. So if there's anyone there that wants to move over to fashion, then you have a really clear yellow brick road path, and you'll be welcomed with open arms.
Thank you, Sallyann. This is very valuable feedback. And so following up on that, can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of request, the type of companies that you, not of course the names, but the kind of requests or questions you got regarding the use of Unreal Engine? Fashion in itself has a very linear value chain, from creativity to merchandising and then selling to the consumer. What kind of requests do you get usually?
There is a spread. There's most people are at the beginning of their journey of understanding, and so to be honest, most people are happy to have what is a game engine conversation. They're aware of what is out there in the public domain, but I think that it really helps to progress the conversation to go back to the very beginning. What is a game engine? Why is it relevant now? And what are the things you can do with it? And so having that conversation is really, really helpful. Whatever their request may be, even if they've come directly and they want to know more about doing the next Balenciaga project, it's still sometimes helpful to get everyone on the first step to then move them around along to the 50th step. But different people are, some brands are awash with ideas, and they're not quite sure which is the strategic right direction for them, because as we all know, the opportunities are vast. Like, where do they begin their journey in this real-time landscape? And some people are, I would say, a little bit more sort of blinkered, and their request is, how do I get in a game? And you have to kind of find something in between there, in that do you really want to get in a game? Do you really need, is that purposeful? Is that going to be a great partnership? And there's great partnerships out there, but sometimes there needs to be a little bit more thought and strategy put behind just getting yourself in a game, and then just helping people understand all the other options. How to incorporate interactivity into the presentation of the collection. We're talking about design and digital assets, leveraging all the amazing progress that's been made in virtual production and in-camera VFX, and helping them see how that can be applied to their own creative pathways, and how digital design can be iterative and can be collaborative. So there's many. I think that the main, most important part of the conversations is that there's a keenness to learn, which is great. They want to know more, and so we'll tell them, like, I'll chat to them about anything they want to talk about, and then kind of guide them through and forward, and connect them with wonderful people like Alex and Simon and Niklas, so that they can then begin to actualize their visions.
Amazing. So just out of curiosity, Alex, Simon, and Niklas, did you see an uptrend in the number of requests you got from the fashion industry as well?
Yeah, I mean, hands down, What I love about that industry is the way they all want to one up each other, which is, and I love it. It's like video games. We want to one up each other too, but the difference is that they have budgets. So it basically just accelerates, right? Now, at the same time, what it then does too is because, you know, everyone wears clothes. So they then talk with their friends out of industry, out of fashion, and then they get their buyers, distributors, supply chain people, they get excited about it. And then it just starts to spread. And it's become this thing. And I think that is ultimately, to Sallyan's point about the type of people that come and the requests you get. It's always like, wouldn't it be great if we did X, Y, and Z? And you're like, hold on, let's bring it down and let's go through the basics. X means this, Y means that, Z has this cost. And once we pipelined it out, we built a solution around a specific problem or a specific end result, then we basically get everyone clear and everyone's like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. It's the excitement that you have to bring down, you know, drain the adrenaline, up the knowledge, and then of course, increase the understanding. Once you do that, everything is sky's the limit at that point in time. But Simon, I'm sure you're seeing this too. Let's pass it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Similar to you guys. I mean, we've seen an uptick in interest from the world of fashion. And what's really exciting from our perspective is just the different nature of the creative and the way in which the brands want to express themselves, you know, pushing the envelope using different forms of digital humans or different styles of virtual world. Yeah, we've worked recently on campaigns for H&M and ASOS, and we've got others in the works. And I think what's really exciting for us is just the broad spectrum of creative ideas. And Balenciaga has definitely helped to seed, you know, thoughts around how a brand can live virtually online as part of kind of real-time worlds. Yeah.
Amazing. So I just want to be aware of time and we need to wrap up. Any final comments for everyone?
I think like for us, yeah. I think like, yeah, definitely you want to find really bold collaborators, I guess. The reason why this project came to fruition, I guess, is because we had a bold company willing to kind of throw themselves headfirst into something, into the unknown, really. And I think we're still in this kind of territory of the unknown. We're trying to kind of map out, like you said, there's possibility of creating more of these sort of comprehensible pipelines and making it sort of, you know, orchestrating budgets that are understandable for fashion brands, because going into this kind of territory, not just from a production standpoint, but from a, you know, investment standpoint and so on, it can be quite opaque. But ultimately, I think, yeah, just newness is what's exciting our studio, and to find real partners who's willing to really push the envelope throughout.
Amazing. So I encourage everyone to continue to the Speakers Lounge, where we will be able to keep on discussing about those wonderful subjects and interact with the audience. And for me, thank you for joining us. It was the new real-time reality for digital fashion at RealTime Conference. My name is Alexis. I was your host today. And Jean-Michel, thanks again, and back to you.